So Bob, we're about to go into episode 3. Before we do that, what's next for Bob Abell? Tell us about that.
Well, the road not taken. Who knows? You look down the path. I have written 2 other books, and they're a little different, and yet they're more ecologically themed. But there's also the old corporate malfeasance thing comes in there, because that plays out in our life all the time. The first one is this one called Trails, and it's a story of a 25-year-old PhD girl who happens to be in ecology at the University of Tucson in Arizona. So it's set in Arizona. So mountains, cactus everywhere, the local birds, the local flora, fauna, etc. I really fell in love with the characters in Trails, and I really didn't want to let them go, even though they were now about to get married and, you know, become old married folks. But
So you decided to write the second book?
well, it was triggered. It was triggered by another event in real world, and that was that in 2014, February I think it was, a meteor, an asteroid appeared out of nowhere, streaked across the sky in northern Russia, and literally blew apart over a city in Russia called Chelyabinsk. And in that blast, 1,500 people were hurt. Virtually every window in the city was busted. And when that asteroid blew, it was 22 miles up. 22 miles, and it still caused that devastation. It was so bright, people got sunburned.
Right.
So I got thinking about that, and then I'd read a story very recently as well by a woman in Australia who had been in Canada, and as a child had been abused by her father and by other men that her father gave access to. And she wrote a absolutely heart-rending tell-all when she finally decided enough was enough. She had to let other people know. So I'd read that, and then this Chelyabinsk thing hit, and I woke up again. Oh, got a story. So this story introduces a new character who was abused as a child. And it introduces her stepfather, who was an absolute horrible nutcase. And it has overtones of religious extremism, because he decides that this incoming asteroid, which our new heroine Barbara has discovered because she's a planetary science student at the university, he decides to intervene and try to stop this happening, because he thinks this asteroid is going to be a trigger for Armageddon, for the second coming. And
that's quite the story.
Yeah, so yeah, it's...
Are we turning this into a movie?
Both these
Okay.
are currently in screenplay format.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I belong to something called the Coast to Coast script reading group on Facebook, and every Monday we sit down and go through a chunk of 2 or 3 scripts, and mine is the one for Fireballs is currently on, so I'm hearing it read by real actors and getting feedback from the group on it. But yeah, the problem with these ones is they're both set in Arizona. They're both, well, among other things, they need, and this is something I found with Corporate Prey, you can write a great movie, you can get awards and nominations, but without star quality cast that everybody knows, it's really, really hard to get traction. So if these get made, I really need a production company that can get the traction. I mean, I'll tell you who I'd love. There's one of the characters in both the stories called Rona. She's a very motherly type, late 40s, and a wonderful lady. And if I had my choice of actresses in the world, it would be one Jerry Ryan, 7 of 9 from Star Trek.
Right.
Fabulous person, and it would be a very different role, but I just know that she would absolutely ace it.
Right.
So, you look at that kind of star quality and you really need the production company behind it, the budget behind it. I can't do that. I did it with this one, but it's not going to happen with these. So these ones are I'm looking to get them forward. I have done lookbooks, or not lookbooks, but I've done episodic breakdowns, because it could be either episodes or a straight feature film. And I've done a pitch deck for both of them. So now it's finding the time, and there's only do, no
Right.
try. So now what I have to do is I have to do the marketing, and marketing's not something that comes naturally to me. I'm happier behind the camera.
Well, you're into networking, so you might probably find some people on your end.
Yeah. Again, also it's going to have to be shot in the U.S. I mean, it's one thing to simulate to simulate the Caribbean on Lac Saint-Pierre. It's and an island on a farm in the Greenbelt.
Right.
But we don't have cactus in Ontario.
No.
And we don't have mountains like the mountains of Arizona. Yeah. So I really need that. And there's a strong racial element in it as well, because of the cross-border stuff. And I also had some really interesting things happen, because we've been in that area a lot. I had to have my teeth done, and got it done in a big metropolis of algodones, which is across the border in Mexico. So I've been back and forth and spent quite a bit of time in Arizona. But yeah, it's a totally different physical environment, and there's a lot of issues there that we try subtly to deal with or not so subtly to
Right.
deal with in the books.
Anything else you want to share with your audience before?
Well, I wrote the novels and made the movie in part as a bit of a wake-up call, because, again, as Rumi said, you have to stare evil in the face, and we have a tendency not to do that. We have the tendency to think the best of people. We have the tendency to think, well, if I could just talk to that CEO, he'd come around to seeing that what he's doing is destroying the climate. He'd do it. He's human, right? It's not the way it works. It's not the way they are. Those people are absolutely convinced that it's their right to destroy the planet as long as they get rich.
Right.
And so I think what people need to take away is an understanding of that reality, an understanding of where fanaticism comes from and how it impacts, and then maybe in their day-to-day life, when there's decisions to be made, when they come to those paths in the road, maybe they'll go a different way. That's the hope.
Well, yes, definitely. And so in regards to our final episode of Corporate Prey, what sticks out? What should we look for?
Well, we've got coincidences, and coincidences do happen in life. Remember, we have Sandy, who's been brought from the PTL lab, where she's been genetically modified to be super aroused around men, given the right foods. They just have to feed her the right stuff. But she, if you recall back to episode 1, when Jill met her in prison, and that was a coincidence, and Jill met her and found out about PTL and what was going on, and then subsequently found herself on the list, which is why she ended up deciding the best thing she could do was not take her pray tell. But Sandy, at that time, Jill said to Sandy, "You're a survivor. Be strong, you're a survivor."
Right.
And Sandy is a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
And so watch her come out swinging. We know she's already planning an escape. Watch where that goes. Rand suddenly flew into Winona. Where's that going? He plans to plant that contaminated seed, or that genetically engineered seed that will pollute all the food for the entitled.
Mm-hmm.
But he then figures he's going to die. So there's a number of things to watch for and how it develops. I think probably the funniest thing from a philosophical perspective is that in the end we meet a person about whom we would normally have preconceived notions. We've heard about the jaguar. We've heard about him, but we've not met him.
Right.
We will meet him. He's on the poster. Fabulous, another fabulous actor. But people can change given the right upbringing and the right drivers in their life. So we'll get a view of how that works as well. Oh yeah, I think the ending will be satisfying. I have to say that the special effects aren't what I would like. There are places where if I had another $30,000, $40,000, I could maybe spiffy it up a bit, but you have to choose your battles. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bob Abell, and we're very happy to have you. And please enjoy the last episode.
Yes, and if people want to follow up, we're not hard to find, especially if somebody wants to produce a couple of other films.
Of course. Perfect. Thank you.